The first thing you notice is how often you were shopping without knowing you were shopping. Not the big purchases, those you were always aware of, the laptop, the furniture, the thing you researched for 3 weeks and finally pulled the trigger on. Those felt like decisions. What you didn't notice was everything else. The thing you picked up at the checkout counter because it was there, the online cart you filled at 11 p.m. because you were bored, and the algorithm knew exactly what to show you. The version of the thing you already owned that was newer, slightly better, $20 more, and available with 2-day shipping. You didn't notice these things because they didn't feel like choices. They felt like weather, something that just happened to you as you moved through the world. The first week of the experiment, your phone still sends you the notifications. Sale ends tonight, back in stock, recommended for you. You read them the way you always have, with a small spike of interest, a finger moving toward the screen. And then you stop, and you notice the spike, and you ask the question. And the answer, almost every time, is the same. You don't actually want it. You want the feeling of getting it. The brief, bright, completely temporary feeling of a package arriving, a bag coming home, a new thing sitting in a space that didn't have a new thing yesterday. By the end of the second week, you've started to recognize the feeling before it leads anywhere. It's specific, this feeling. It arrives in the chest, not in the mind. The mind is usually already busy building a justification. You need it for work. It would make your mornings easier. It's on sale, which means it's basically saving money. The chest just wants the hit, and once you learn to feel the difference between the two, you can't unfeel it, which is useful, which is also, occasionally, deeply annoying. Here is what you expected to happen. You expected people to notice. Not dramatically, not with an intervention, but you expected someone to ask why you didn't buy anything at the market. You expected a comment when you showed up to the group dinner in the same jacket you'd worn the last 3 times. You expected your partner or your coworker or your friend to register, somehow, that something was different about you, that the usual flow of acquisition had stopped, that the person they knew, who was always picking something up, always finding something new, had quietly put down the habit. Nobody noticed. Not in the first month, not in the second, not at all, as far as you could tell, for the entire 6 months. Your coworker Marcus, who sees you every day, never mentioned the jacket. Your friend Lena, who has seen the inside of your apartment a dozen times, didn't register that nothing new had appeared. The people in your life kept treating you exactly the same way, with the same warmth, the same jokes, the same easy familiarity that has nothing to do with what you bought last week and never did. This should have been obvious. Sitting with it now, that it should have been obvious. Of course your friends don't care what you bought. Of course your value to the people in your life has nothing to do with the state of your wardrobe or the newness of the things on your shelves. Of course. And yet, you had been living as though the opposite were true, not consciously, not with the explicit belief that purchases earned you belonging, but operationally, practically, in the way your behavior actually functioned. You had been spending as though being seen was part of the deal, as though the thing you brought home was also, in some small way, bringing you somewhere. The jacket revelation arrives on a Thursday in December. You're looking in the mirror before heading out, and you're wearing the jacket, the same one, again, and you realize you're waiting for something to feel wrong about it, and nothing does. It's a good jacket, it fits well. You've had it for 2 years, and it's in perfect condition because you take care of your things. There is nothing missing from this moment. There is no absence where the new jacket should be. You stand in front of the mirror for a minute longer than usual. Then you go out. You don't start tracking the money until month 3. That's not what the experiment was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be about something harder to measure, about desire, about habit, about the strange relationship between buying things and feeling like yourself. But in month 3, curiosity gets the better of you, and you open a spreadsheet, and you start going back through your bank statements with a highlighter. What you find is this. In the 6 months before the experiment, you spent an average of $340 a month on what you can only describe as ambient purchasing. Not groceries, not rent, not the planned necessary things, the other stuff. The checkout counter stuff. The 11 p.m. online cart stuff. The slightly better version of the thing you already had stuff. $340 a month, moving through your life so quietly, you never once noticed it leaving. $340 a month is $4,080 a year. In 5 years, that's $20,400. You stare at the number for a while. You don't feel angry about it, exactly. It's too late for anger. And anyway, the money wasn't stolen. You handed it over voluntarily, cheerfully, repeatedly, in exchange for a feeling that lasted approximately as long as the package took to open. What you feel instead is something closer to curiosity about the version of yourself that made those purchases, about what she thought she was getting, about whether she ever got it. The answer, you're pretty sure, is no. Not really. The feeling was always temporary. The thing always became normal, faster than you expected. The shelf filled up, and you stopped seeing what was on it, and you went looking for the next thing that would make you see again. This is the loop. This is what the 6 months without it has let you see from the outside. Somewhere around month 4, something unexpected happens. You start to feel the space. Not the money, you've already felt the money, in the satisfying and slightly dizzying way of someone who looked at a spreadsheet and did the math. What you start to feel is the actual physical and psychological space created by not acquiring things. The surface of your desk, which is somehow cleaner than it's been in years, not because you cleaned it, but because nothing new arrived to cover it. The inside of your closet, which you can now see entirely from the doorway. The quiet of a Saturday afternoon that isn't organized around going somewhere to get something. This space is uncomfortable at first. You don't know what to do with it. For a long time, without realizing it, the act of shopping had been filling something. Not a shelf. The shelves are full. Something else. The low-grade restlessness of a Wednesday evening with nothing specific to do. The vague dissatisfaction that appears after a hard week and wants to be solved. The particular emptiness that arrives when you've been working hard and haven't been taking care of yourself. And buying something feels like the fastest available version of taking care of yourself. None of those things are solved by the thing you buy. You knew this, technically. But knowing something technically and feeling it land in your body are different experiences. And it isn't until month 4 that it really lands. What fills the space instead is harder to explain and easier to dismiss. More sleep, longer walks, cooking more on Sundays, finishing the book that had been sitting on your nightstand for 4 months with a bookmark on page 47. Small things, boring things, the kind of things that don't photograph well and don't make for an interesting update, but that quietly, cumulatively produce in you a kind of evenness you hadn't felt in a long time. Your friend Kara asks how you're doing one evening over dinner, and you say good, and you mean it in a way you haven't meant it in a while. She doesn't know why. You don't explain. It would sound strange. It would sound like a commercial for something. But the truth is sitting right there in the answer. You're good. Not because anything happened, because something stopped. By month 6, the experiment has stopped feeling like an experiment. The question, do I actually want this, or do I just want to have bought it, is no longer something you have to remember to ask. It happens automatically, the way checking your mirrors happens automatically when you've been driving long enough. You don't stop to think about it, you just do it, and the answer comes, and most of the time the answer is no, not really, and you move on. There are still things you buy. Of course there are. The experiment was never about deprivation. You were never interested in deprivation. It was about honesty, about understanding which purchases were real and which were reflexive. And what you've discovered at the end of 6 months is that the real ones are rarer than you thought and more satisfying. A new pair of running shoes after a month of thinking about it and noticing the old ones had genuinely reached the end of their life. A book recommended by someone you trust on a subject you've been thinking about for weeks. Coffee with a friend on a Tuesday morning, the kind that costs $6 and lasts an hour and is worth every cent because you're actually there. Those feel different. They feel chosen. They feel like decisions rather than weather. The spreadsheet, at the end of 6 months, shows $1,890 that didn't leave. Not invested, not in a special account, just not spent, present, available. Part of a balance that is incrementally, quietly, uneventfully higher than it would have been. $1,000 doesn't sound like a revelation. You know that. You're not going to pretend it's a life-changing sum. But the number is not the point, or not entirely. The point is what the number represents. 6 months of choosing. 6 months of asking a question before answering with your card. 6 months of small, invisible, completely unremarkable decisions that added up to something you can actually measure. Nobody noticed. Your friends didn't notice. Your coworkers didn't notice. The world continued exactly as it had, indifferent to the presence or absence of whatever you were or weren't buying. Only your bank account noticed. And it turns out your bank account has been paying very close attention all along.